The sky above the floating prison was a sickly shade of green, streaked with jagged clouds that glowed faintly with the energy of distant storms. The prison itself hovered silently in the void, a massive structure of dark metal, its walls pulsing with an eerie light that warned anyone who dared approach, trespassers would not survive. Inside, a girl moved silently through the dim corridors, her steps almost ghost-like, though every nerve in her body screamed with tension. Lyra was not an ordinary alien. Her kind had imprisoned her for a reason they refused to explain. She had been locked away for as long as she could remember, kept in a cell that hummed with energy fields designed to suppress even the faintest spark of her abilities. Yet tonight, as the distant hum of the prison's defenses vibrated through the walls, she felt something shift deep within her. It was a feeling she had learned to recognize, a pulse of power, a whisper of freedom that told her this was the moment to act. The cell door opened automatically as she approached it, responding to the subtle patterns she had memorized over countless months of confinement. Each step forward was a careful calculation. One misstep and the energy fields would fry her nervous system in an instant. The corridors were empty, but the low hum of surveillance drones patrolling the upper levels reminded her that the prison never truly slept. Lyra had watched the drones for weeks, mapping their patterns, noting every blind spot. Now, she would put all her patience and intelligence to the ultimate test. Her heartbeat quickened, but her face remained calm, almost serene, as if she were simply walking through a garden instead of a fortress designed to end her life at the first sign of rebellion. As she turned a corner, a door hissed open. A patrol drone, its sensors glowing a cold blue, floated silently into view. Lyra froze, holding her breath. The drone's optic lens scanned the hallway, sweeping back and forth in a slow, deliberate motion. She pressed herself against the wall, every muscle taut, barely daring to breathe. Seconds stretched into eternity. The drone's light passed over her chest, over her face, lingering for an agonizing instant before it moved on. Her heart pounded so loudly she feared it might betray her presence, but she remained perfectly still until the lens finally shifted away. Only then did she let out a breath she had been holding for far too long. She continued forward, each step measured, each movement precise. The next obstacle was the energy barrier that sealed off the lower level, the only route to the docking bay. Lyra placed her hand against the shimmering wall, feeling the pulse of raw energy vibrate through her fingers. Closing her eyes, she whispered a word in a language no one else in the prison could hear. The barrier shimmered violently, sparking and crackling, but then parted just enough for her to slip through. Her body tingled from the effort, a reminder that using her power came at a cost. She staggered slightly, catching herself against the wall, but her determination refused to waver. Freedom was so close she could taste it. The docking bay was a cavernous space, illuminated by the pale light of distant stars reflecting off the metallic walls. Ships of all shapes and sizes were docked here, though none belonged to prisoners. These were the vessels of the guards and the overseers. One small craft, however, sat alone in the far corner, its hull battered but functional. It had been her focus for weeks, the key to her escape. Lyra approached it cautiously, checking the bay for guards or surveillance drones. The silence was oppressive, almost unnatural. She had just reached the ship when a faint sound echoed behind her, a metallic click, almost too quiet to notice. She froze, sensing danger. The sound repeated, closer this time. Someone, or something, was coming. Without thinking, Lyra activated the ship's controls. The engines roared to life, and the vessel lifted slightly from the ground, its thrusters sending sparks across the docking bay floor. She didn't have time to secure herself fully. The approaching sound grew louder, the shuffle of heavy boots echoing against metal walls. The ship's thrusters flared as she guided it toward the exit, weaving through narrow passages, narrowly avoiding falling debris. A series of warning alarms blared as the prison's security systems detected the unauthorized launch. Red lights flashed violently across the bay, casting long shadows that danced and flickered like phantoms. Explosions erupted as defensive turrets opened fire. Sparks flew past her ship, scorching metal and sending shards tumbling into the void. Lyra gritted her teeth and pushed the vessel to its limits, dodging and twisting through the chaos. Her hands moved with precision, almost like an extension of her mind. Every shot that missed her seemed deliberate, almost slow motion in her vision. She felt the exhilaration of danger, the fierce joy of living in a moment where one wrong decision meant death. Finally, after what felt like hours compressed into seconds, she broke through the outer gates. The prison's massive walls receded into the distance, and the cold expanse of space welcomed her. Alone in the void, Lyra allowed herself a moment to breathe. The prison was far behind her now, a dark blot against the stars. But freedom was only the beginning. Somewhere out there, humans awaited, creatures she had only heard whispers of, creatures whose strength and resilience were spoken of in her homeworld with awe and fear. Her instincts told her that meeting them would change everything. She did not know if they would be friends or foes, but she knew one thing with certainty: her destiny was no longer her captor's to decide. It belonged to her, and to the choices she would make in the vast, unknown galaxy ahead. The stars stretched endlessly around Lyra as her battered ship drifted through the cold black of space. The hum of the engines filled the cockpit, a reminder that she was still alive, and that survival meant more than just escaping the prison. She had seen freedom, tasted it for the first time, but she knew it could be fleeting. Behind her, the massive silhouette of the alien prison was disappearing into the distance, yet she could not shake the feeling that eyes were still watching. Somewhere out there, her pursuers were closing in. Her navigation systems blinked erratically, warning her of an unfamiliar gravitational field ahead. Lyra leaned over the controls, her fingers moving deftly as she scanned the readings. Something was pulling her toward it, something powerful, strange, and human. She had only heard whispers of humans in her kind's legends, resilient, clever, and dangerous. No one had told her that they were capable of spaceflight this far from their home planet, or that they could be her next challenge, or her next ally. A flicker of fear ran through her, but curiosity pushed harder. She adjusted the course of her ship, angling toward the signal. Back on the human patrol ship, alarms blared, echoing through the steel corridors. Sensors had picked up an unidentified vessel entering restricted space. The captain, a tall, calm figure with piercing eyes, stood in the command center, his hand resting lightly on the edge of the console. "Unknown craft approaching," the communications officer said, voice tight with anticipation. "No identification. It's moving fast, but it's not responding to hails." The captain's gaze narrowed. "Prepare for interception," he ordered, his voice steady but commanding. "And keep weapons on standby. We don't know what, or who, we're dealing with." Lyra's ship was small, fragile compared to the human vessel, yet it moved with a speed and agility that belied its size. She could see the humans' massive hull through the viewport, their lights scanning the darkness. Every instinct screamed at her to hide, but the systems of her ship betrayed her. A faint signal, an accidental distress beacon, pulsed into space, alerting the humans to her presence. She cursed under her breath, realizing she had no choice but to face them. The human ship altered its trajectory, moving to intercept. Lyra felt her stomach tighten as she watched the massive craft loom closer, its size almost overwhelming. The patrol ship's lights bathed her cockpit in a harsh glare, and a voice came over the communications channel, cautious but firm. "This is the United Earth Patrol. Identify yourself and state your purpose." Lyra hesitated. She had no language in common with these humans, no way to explain who she was or why she had come. Panic threatened to rise, but she forced herself to stay calm. Slowly, she manipulated the ship's translation protocols, activating a basic universal communicator she had salvaged from the prison's labs. The voice that came through was broken, halting, but understandable. "I am Lyra, escaped prisoner." Silence followed her words. On the human ship, the captain exchanged a quick glance with his officers. None of them had ever encountered an alien like this, one that could speak in their rudimentary language, one that had obviously suffered yet was alive and capable. "Bring her aboard," the captain said finally, with caution, his voice laced with curiosity. "But no mistakes. We don't know what she can do." Lyra guided her ship closer, every movement precise and careful. As she docked, the human's mechanical clamps attached to her vessel, and she felt the subtle shudder as the doors sealed her in. The docking bay lights blazed around her, revealing the massive human crew. Their expressions ranged from shock to suspicion, their eyes wide at the sight of her alien form. Slender, yet strong, pale, almost translucent skin that glowed faintly in the bay's light, and eyes that shone with intelligence and fear at once. She stepped out cautiously, hands raised slightly to show she meant no harm. A human officer reached forward, scanning her with a small device. Lyra flinched at the cold touch, but stayed still. The readings came back clean, confirming that she carried no weapons, no immediate danger. Still, she could feel the tension in the room. The humans were warriors, survivors of countless conflicts, and they did not trust easily. The captain approached, his movements deliberate, measured. "You're far from home," he said simply. His tone was not harsh, but firm, and it carried a weight that Lyra recognized instantly: authority. "Who sent you here? What are you?" Lyra hesitated. Her mind raced. Should she tell them everything, or hold some secrets for now? She opted for the truth in the simplest form she could. "I escaped. They, my people, imprisoned me. I need help." Her voice was barely above a whisper, but there was no mistake. Desperation and hope mingled in every syllable. The humans exchanged murmurs. Some were curious, some wary, and one officer muttered under her breath, "We've never seen anything like her." The captain studied Lyra for a long moment, weighing her words, her demeanor, and the faint, almost imperceptible energy that seemed to hum around her body. He could sense the danger, yes, but also the potential. The girl was extraordinary. Finally, he nodded. "You'll have it. But understand this, we are not naive. Any wrong move, and we will respond. You are a guest here, and guests who bring trouble do not survive long." Lyra's eyes met his, a flicker of gratitude passing through her fear. She had survived the prison, but surviving this encounter was the next challenge. Outside the docking bay, the black expanse of space waited, filled with unknowns. Somewhere out there, the aliens who had hunted her still searched, their intentions clear and deadly. But for the first time, Lyra felt a glimmer of something she had never truly known: hope. She was not alone. For now, humans were her allies, her chance to learn, to fight, to survive. And perhaps, in time, to change the course of her destiny forever. The hum of the human ship filled the air, a constant reminder of machinery and life intertwined in a fragile balance. Lyra stood in the middle of the vast docking bay turned temporary quarters, her eyes scanning every corner, every shadow. Nothing moved, yet she could feel the tension, a living thing that clung to her like a second skin. The humans around her were quiet, wary, exchanging glances that spoke volumes. They had saved her, yes, but trust was not freely given on this vessel. And she had no illusions about it. Captain Harris, the human leader, stepped forward, his voice calm yet commanding. "You need to understand something," he said. "We saved you because we had no choice. But that does not mean we trust you. Not yet. Your species, your kind, has a reputation. One that is not easily forgiven." Lyra's heart pounded in her chest, but she did not flinch. She had been imprisoned for years, hunted for her abilities, yet the thought of being doubted by humans, of all beings, stung in a way she had not expected. She tried to explain herself, her voice steady. I am not like them. I want no harm. I escaped because I had to. I want only to survive." Her words were simple, yet the weight behind them carried truth. But the humans were not convinced. One officer, tall and imposing, crossed his arms. "You have powers. Something that can destroy or save. How do we know you're not a threat? One wrong move, and this ship, and all of us, could be dead." Lyra's lips pressed together. She knew he was right. Her powers were dangerous, unpredictable, even to herself. She had spent years suppressing them under the alien prison's control, yet even now, fragments of her abilities flickered involuntarily, sending tiny pulses of energy through her fingertips. She had to learn control, fast. One mistake, one spark, and the humans who had shown her mercy could become her victims. It did not take long for that opportunity to test her. The ship's sensors flared violently as the distant shadow of an alien scout fleet appeared on the radar. They had followed her signal, relentless and exact. Panic rippled through the human crew as alarms blared, red lights strobed, and machinery whined under the sudden stress of emergency maneuvers. Lyra felt the energy thrumming inside her grow, reacting to the alien presence. Her instincts screamed at her to act, to fight. But she hesitated, afraid of revealing the full extent of her power to beings who still doubted her. Captain Harris barked orders, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Prepare defenses. Lock down the ship. And Lyra," he paused, eyeing her carefully. "If you want to help, now is the time to prove yourself." The words struck her like fire. She did not need the approval, yet the thought of failure, of causing harm because she hesitated, burned inside her chest. She stepped forward, feeling the raw energy within her respond, bending slightly to her will. The alien scouts had closed the distance rapidly, their ships sleek and merciless. Lyra extended her hands toward the ship's energy conduit, and a soft glow appeared around her palms. The humans gasped, and for a moment, fear replaced hesitation. Sparks of pure energy arced from her fingers, striking the alien ships as if guided by unseen intelligence. Weapons that had taken humans minutes to calculate and fire were now replaced by her precision, her instincts, and her power. The aliens staggered, their formation breaking, and for the first time, the humans watched her not with fear, but with awe. The battle was brief yet intense. Lyra had no formal training in warfare, no tactical instruction from humans. Yet her ability to anticipate the aliens' movements, to react faster than the eye could follow, turned the tide. By the time the last alien scout fled into the darkness of space, the humans were silent, the weight of disbelief pressing heavily upon them. The captain stepped toward her, his expression unreadable. "You just saved this ship," he said finally. "And none of us expected you to be capable of that." Lyra lowered her hands, exhausted from the effort. Sweat ran down her temple, her body trembling from the exertion of controlling her powers so forcefully. She tried to speak, to explain herself, but words failed her. For once, the humans could see the truth in her eyes. She had risked everything to protect them, not because they were her allies yet, but because she believed it was the right thing to do. In the hours that followed, the crew worked to repair minor damages, still wary, still cautious. Lyra found a corner of the ship to sit, her thoughts spinning faster than the engines outside. Trust, she realized, was not given, it was earned in moments like these. And she had just taken the first step. Yet deep inside, she could sense the subtle currents of doubt still flowing among the humans. Some of them looked at her with suspicion, calculating, waiting for a mistake. Others, though, watched with quiet respect, admiration hidden behind guarded expressions. Captain Harris came to stand beside her, silent for a moment as he studied the stars through the viewport. "You are stronger than I thought," he said finally, almost quietly. "And yet, strength alone isn't enough. You will need to learn, to control, to understand us, and we will need to understand you. Only then can we survive what's coming." His words carried a weight she felt deep in her chest. The danger was far from over. If anything, it had only begun. That night, as the ship cruised silently through the void, Lyra stared out into the endless black, thinking of the prison she had left behind, of the humans she still had to earn the trust of, and of the alien fleet that hunted her relentlessly. She understood now that survival would require more than power. It would require patience, cunning, and most of all, trust, a fragile, fleeting thing that she would have to fight for every day. And she promised herself she would not fail. Not now. Not ever. Lyra sat in the dimly lit chamber aboard the human ship, her legs crossed, her hands resting lightly on her knees. The hum of the engines vibrated through the floor beneath her, a constant reminder that the vessel carried her into unknown territory. She had been aboard for days now, moving carefully among the humans, learning their ways, observing their routines. Some stared at her with curiosity, others with wariness, and a few, rare, fleeting glimpses, looked at her with something that resembled awe. She could feel it, like a faint vibration in the air. The humans were beginning to notice that she was unlike any being they had ever encountered. Her thoughts were interrupted by a soft chime. The captain, Harris, appeared at the doorway, his expression calm yet unreadable. "We've detected something unusual," he said, motioning for her to come closer. Lyra rose smoothly, her eyes following him as he led her to the navigation bay. On the holographic screen floated a faint, pulsing energy signature, distant yet unmistakable. "It's alien," Harris continued. "But unlike anything in our database. It's powerful. And it's moving toward us." Lyra's eyes widened slightly. She could sense it, too. The artifact had been mentioned in fragments of her memory, a strange, almost mythical device her captors had feared more than anything else. She had never seen it fully, only glimpses in fleeting visions, whispers of its energy, its capability to alter the balance of power across galaxies. Her heart beat faster. This could be the key to understanding her own abilities, and perhaps the key to defeating those who hunted her. The humans watched her silently, sensing the shift in her demeanor. "Can you reach it?" the captain asked cautiously, measuring his words. Lyra nodded, her voice quiet but certain. "I think so. But I will need to guide the ship closer. The energy, it responds to me." Harris's eyes narrowed, not with distrust, but with calculation. "You understand this artifact? Its danger." Lyra hesitated, the memories swirling like mist. "Yes, and no. It is dangerous. But I believe it can help us. It wants balance, I think." The journey to the artifact was tense. The ship moved through the darkness, guided by Lyra's instinct and the humans' technology. Every second was measured, every maneuver precise. The energy readings on the screen pulsed brighter, and with each pulse, Lyra felt her own abilities resonate. Her power, once a faint whisper in the prison's suppressive cells, now stirred like a tide beneath her skin. She could feel it answering the artifact, a silent recognition that sent shivers down her spine. When they reached the coordinates, the artifact revealed itself. Suspended in the void, floating silently among the stars, was a crystalline structure unlike anything Lyra had ever seen. Its surface shimmered with colors that seemed impossible, shifting and flowing like liquid light. The humans gasped, their eyes wide with awe and caution. "What is it?" one of the officers asked. Lyra took a deep breath, stepping closer to the viewport. "It is old. Very old. And very powerful. It can amplify abilities. It can protect. It can destroy. But it chooses its user carefully." Harris studied her, a thoughtful frown creasing his forehead. "And it chose you." Lyra hesitated, her fingers tracing invisible patterns in the air. "I don't know, yet. But it is responding to me. I can feel it. It recognizes something in me. Something they tried to suppress." The hum of her power grew louder, an invisible pulse that vibrated through the ship's hull. The humans stepped back instinctively, both in fear and fascination. Suddenly, the calm was shattered. The alien hunters who had been pursuing her detected the artifact's activation. Long-range sensors lit up with incoming ships, their engines blazing with deadly intent. "They found us," Harris said, urgency creeping into his voice. Lyra's eyes narrowed. "We have no choice. We must use it, or they will destroy everything." The captain nodded, realizing that they were about to enter a battle unlike any other. Lyra stepped onto the bridge, her hands glowing faintly as she focused on the artifact. Sparks of energy arced across the control panels, harmless yet mesmerizing, a sign of the bond forming between her and the crystalline structure. She felt a strange calmness amidst the chaos, as though the artifact itself was guiding her actions, lending strength to her instincts. The humans watched silently, trust building in increments with every precise movement she made. The alien fleet arrived, sleek and deadly, surrounding the human ship with intent to destroy. Their weapons charged, targeting the vessel. Lyra inhaled sharply, focusing all her energy on the artifact. A pulse of light erupted, expanding outward like a wave, colliding with the alien weapons in mid-space. Shields flared, energy arcs crackled, and the alien ships staggered back, confused by the unexpected defense. Lyra's control was raw but undeniable. Every movement she made was mirrored by the artifact, every thought amplified into action. For the first time, the humans witnessed not just her power, but the potential of an alliance they had barely imagined. Harris glanced at her, a mixture of relief and awe in his eyes. "She's not just an ally, she's a force we cannot underestimate," he muttered, almost to himself. Lyra's heart raced. She had always felt different, but now, she realized she could change the course of events far beyond survival. She could become a symbol, a bridge between species, a beacon of hope. As the alien ships regrouped, retreating for the moment, Lyra allowed herself a brief moment to breathe. The artifact pulsed softly, a silent acknowledgement of her connection. She had touched something ancient, powerful, and mysterious, and it had chosen to respond to her. But she knew this was only the beginning. Her enemies would not stop, her powers were not fully understood, and the humans still did not know the depths of her capabilities. Yet for the first time, Lyra felt a surge of certainty. She was no longer just a prisoner. She was becoming the key to something far greater than herself. The hum of the human ship had grown tense over the past hours. Repairs had been completed after the encounter with the alien scouts, but the crew's unease lingered like a shadow over the corridors. Lyra moved quietly among them, observing their expressions, noting the subtle glances that spoke volumes. Some were still wary, others cautiously respectful, but beneath it all, a tension simmered that she could not ignore. Something had changed. Something was wrong. It began with small signs. Equipment malfunctioning in odd ways, doors locking without command, faint whispers passing through the communications channels. Lyra sensed it immediately. Someone aboard the ship was acting against them. Her instincts, honed from years of survival and escape, screamed that this was no ordinary mistake. Her eyes narrowed as she followed the patterns, noting subtle movements and hushed conversations. One officer, tall and wiry, lingered near her docking bay at odd hours, too often appearing in places where he had no official reason to be. Captain Harris noticed the shift as well. He called the senior officers together in the command center, the holographic maps casting long shadows across the room. "We've had multiple breaches of protocol," he said, voice low but firm. "Some systems have been tampered with. I don't know who, but I need every officer to be vigilant. This ship carries someone who is being hunted, and we cannot afford betrayal." Lyra stood quietly at the back, her heart pounding. She did not need to hear the rest to know who was behind it. Humans were clever, yes, but greed and fear could blind them, and one of their own had succumbed. The betrayal revealed itself suddenly. As Lyra was checking the ship's energy conduits, the tall officer confronted her, a device in hand that hummed with malicious intent. "You're coming with me," he said, voice tight with greed. "I'm taking you to the highest bidder. That artifact of yours? Imagine the power. Imagine what I could command." Lyra's eyes widened in disbelief. This human, one she had cautiously tried to trust, was attempting to sell her life to the very enemies who had hunted her. Rage and fear collided within her, but she forced herself to stay calm. Panic would only make her prey. Before he could activate the device, Lyra moved instinctively. Energy flared around her hands, a blinding light that forced the officer back. Sparks danced across the metal floor, and the alarms blared, warning the ship of the unauthorized activation. The officer stumbled, momentarily disarmed, but Lyra knew this was only a delay. Her trust had been shattered, and she understood the full weight of the danger. Betrayal came not only from her enemies but from those she considered allies. By the time the human crew realized what had happened, it was too late. Lyra had been captured, but not by the aliens who hunted her this time, by humans who were blind to greed and ambition. She was restrained and placed in a small chamber, one designed to contain someone of her abilities, lined with energy dampeners to suppress her powers. She could feel the hum of her energy being pulled away, stifled, restrained. Anger burned through her chest, but she knew she had no choice but to wait, to plan, to survive. Her mind raced, seeking any weakness, any advantage. Outside her containment, the human crew was divided. Some demanded she be handed over to the aliens for reward, seeing her as nothing more than a commodity. Others, led by Captain Harris, argued fiercely for her protection. "We cannot let her fall into their hands," Harris insisted, pacing the command center. "She is not a tool. She is our ally, our chance to survive, and perhaps to turn the tide." The debate was heated, filled with accusations and fear, but the captain's voice carried authority. He would not allow greed to dictate their fate. Meanwhile, Lyra's mind was far from the arguments. She sensed the artifact calling to her, faint but unmistakable, reaching across the void to communicate in ways only she could feel. It pulsed with energy, a reminder that power could be both a weapon and a shield, and that it responded to those who were patient, intelligent, and determined. She focused inward, channeling the remnants of her suppressed strength through the dampeners, feeling the vibration of her own energy return in small, deliberate bursts. Her eyes glowed faintly as she tested her limits, each pulse a reminder that she was not powerless. Time became her enemy and her ally. Hours passed as she observed the humans who had betrayed her, noting their routines, their movements, their weaknesses. Her powers, though restrained, allowed her subtle manipulations, a flicker of light here, a minor shock there, small but enough to test her environment and gather information. She understood the truth clearly now. Survival required patience, cunning, and timing. One wrong move could end her life. One right move could turn the tables completely. The night grew tense, and the shadows within the chamber seemed to lengthen, twisting with the hum of suppressed energy. Lyra's thoughts returned to the humans who had protected her, the few she could trust. Captain Harris, she realized, was her anchor, someone who had seen her potential and chosen to protect it despite danger and uncertainty. That bond, fragile though it was, became the focus of her determination. She would escape, not only from those who betrayed her but from all who sought to control her destiny. And when she did, the balance of power would shift in ways no one could predict. As the ship's lights dimmed for the human cycle of rest, Lyra allowed herself a moment to breathe. She was not defeated. The betrayal had been a shock, a test of trust, and a lesson in vigilance. But within her chest, beneath the simmering anger and restrained energy, she felt a spark of hope. The artifact was still out there. The humans who believed in her were still fighting. And she, Lyra, was no longer a mere prisoner. She was a force awakening, patient, observant, and ready to reclaim control of her destiny. The void of space stretched endlessly before Lyra, black and indifferent, yet charged with the weight of destiny. Her hands hovered above the ship's controls, trembling slightly, not from fear, but from the raw energy coursing through her veins. The artifact, now firmly within reach, pulsed with life, its colors shifting in response to her presence. She could feel it responding to every thought, every intention, amplifying her strength in ways she had never experienced. The humans around her worked tirelessly, repairing systems, preparing weapons, and readying themselves for the battle that was about to begin. Captain Harris stood nearby, his gaze steady and unwavering. "Lyra," he said, voice calm amidst the chaos, "we face the entire alien war fleet. If we fail, humanity, and perhaps countless other worlds, will be lost. Are you ready?" Lyra met his eyes, her own glowing faintly in the dim light. "I am," she replied, her voice firm. "We can do this. Together." The captain nodded, and a quiet determination settled over the crew. For the first time, trust was no longer tentative, it was a bond forged in the fires of previous battles and shared survival. The alien fleet loomed on the radar, countless ships stretching across the darkness, sleek and deadly, each bristling with weapons. Their intent was clear: annihilation. They had pursued Lyra relentlessly, convinced that capturing her and the artifact would secure ultimate power. But they underestimated her. And they underestimated humans. The patrol ship dove into action, dodging waves of incoming fire with precise maneuvers, engines blazing against the darkness. Lyra's hands glowed, arcs of energy leaping from her fingers to the artifact, which responded by generating a protective shield around the vessel. The first shots from the alien fleet bounced harmlessly against it. The humans fought with strategy and courage, coordinated movements honed over years of conflict. Lyra's powers amplified their weapons, turning ordinary laser cannons into devastating force. She could feel the flow of battle, sensing the aliens' movements almost before they occurred. The hum of the artifact in resonance with her own energy created an almost symbiotic link, allowing her to act with instinctive precision. Sparks of light arced across space, striking alien ships and sending them spinning into the void. The humans stared in awe as the alien fleet faltered, confused and overwhelmed by a force they could not comprehend. But victory did not come easily. The alien warlords, sensing the threat posed by Lyra and the artifact, unleashed their most fearsome weapons. Massive beams of energy cut through the void, tearing through smaller ships, forcing the human crew into frantic evasive maneuvers. Lyra's pulse quickened as she raised her hands, focusing every ounce of energy on a concentrated strike. Light exploded from the artifact in a wave of power, colliding with the alien beams, creating a blinding flash that illuminated the void for miles. The warlords faltered, their fleet momentarily thrown into disarray. Amidst the chaos, Lyra realized that this was more than a battle for survival. It was a test of leadership, courage, and unity. She could feel the humans' trust in her, and it strengthened her resolve. Every pulse of energy, every strike against the enemy, was a testament to the bond between species, fragile yet unbreakable. She moved with fluid grace, energy arcs weaving like ribbons of light through the battlefield, amplifying the humans' attacks and neutralizing the enemy's offensive. For the first time, humans and alien allies she had not yet met could sense the possibility of hope. As the battle reached its peak, Lyra spotted the command ship of the alien warlords, a massive vessel bristling with weaponry, the source of the fleet's coordination. She knew what had to be done. Channeling the artifact's full energy through her own power, she focused every thought, every intention, on one precise target. A beam of concentrated light shot forth, piercing the enemy flagship with a force that shook the void itself. Explosions rippled outward, sending shockwaves through the fleet, disorienting and scattering the alien forces. The humans, seizing the moment, moved in for a decisive strike, turning what had seemed like impossible odds into a victory that defied expectation. When the smoke cleared, the alien fleet was broken, retreating into the far reaches of space. The human ship floated amidst the remnants of the battlefield, damaged but intact. The crew moved quietly, tending to repairs, checking systems, and ensuring survival. Lyra stood on the bridge, her hands still glowing faintly, the artifact hovering before her, pulsing softly as if in quiet approval. She looked at Captain Harris, seeing the relief and pride in his eyes. "You did it," he said simply, voice carrying emotion he rarely revealed. "We did it. Together." For the first time, Lyra allowed herself a moment to breathe. She had survived the prison, escaped, gained the humans' trust, and unlocked the artifact's power. But more than that, she had discovered her destiny, a bridge between species, a force of hope and unity in a galaxy torn by fear and conflict. Her journey was far from over, but she had proven that strength, courage, and trust could overcome even the darkest of odds. As the ship set a course for safe territory, Lyra gazed out at the stars, the endless expanse filled with possibilities. Somewhere in that vast darkness, new challenges awaited, new alliances could be forged, and new threats would rise. But she was ready. No longer a prisoner, no longer alone, she had claimed her destiny. And in the quiet hum of the ship, the artifact's soft pulse seemed to whisper the same truth she now knew in her heart. She was not just surviving, she was leading, shaping the future of worlds yet to come.